Erev Sukkah Toshin Pei Bruchim Aboim B'Shem Egen Shir Torah of the Bekovet to introduce Rav Zev Smith for today's shir on repairing Sukkah, opening cans, making ice cubes instead on Yom Tov. Boneh Yom Tov l'tzarech echel nefesh. What would like to have the great exclusive sponsoring a shir call Egen Shir Torah at 718-851-8651.
Yom Tov, Rav Sukkah is a time of Yom Katzah Malach and Meruba. I want to talk about a sugya that comes up in Hilchas Yom Tov, which is specifically Nageya for Hilchas Sukkah. We had the Shaila, and I hope this year, because if it's so late in the year, it won't happen again, but because of the weather, either it's a rainy weather or stormy weather, the kids of someone's Sukkah collapsed in areas with the whole family and no Sukkah. Is there a heter to have a guy, ask a guy to repair a Sukkah on Yom Tov? Today, with the bamboo mats that are very light, you have a new Shaila. That happens quite often, even in non-cold weather. If you move the shlak and the spikitz of the schach comes off the wall, the walls of the sukkah, that's much easier than rebuilding a sukkah. Is there a heter to have a yid or a guy, lahavdil, move the bamboo mats back in its place, and now you could sit in it? Maybe that's not such a form of binyan. Then we had a question of Yom Tov, making ice cubes, making ice cream, jello, opening cans and bottles on Yom Tov. And we'll have some interesting early Einig Yom Tov question again to talk about by the Yom Tov Suda. But if you notice, the Tzad HaShav L'Chayra are all situations of Boneh on Yom Tov. Now, even if we learn Hilchas Yom Tov, whoever thinks that Boneh is Negeya, but as we'll see, today's sugya is Boneh on Yom Tov. Is it mutar alidei Yisrael v'ochel nefesh? Is it mutar alidei akum? Is there a heter because it's ochel nefesh? So what comes to mind, I had this shaila once, a true story. My next door neighbor had for many, many years, he had a fig tree growing in his backyard. And for Rosh Hashanah, it was a very convenient shechiyanu, because you knew it was a new crop. And he always gave the neighbors fresh figs to make a shechiyanu, a leil Rosh Hashanah. One year he forgot to pull off the fruit, the figs, and he asked, are you allowed to pluck fresh figs on Rosh Hashanah, on Yom Tov, l'tzarech oichel nefesh? Which is also an interesting question. Is ktsira muta on Yom Tov oichel nefesh? So what we think of impulsively is a quoted Yerushalmi. Maybe sometimes it's misquoted, but the Yerushalmi is in Beya, Perik Aleph Halacha Yud, that seems to say that on Yom Tov only Lisha ve'elach, only malachas after Lisha are muta. Lisha and then baking, but anything before Lisha on Yom Tov is asa even for Oichel Nefesh. Now I know someone is a Mordek Machnis Oirich, and he keeps his oven on a whole Yom Tov, and he bakes challah on Yom Tov. He needs a lot of challah, so he needs K-N-E-A-D-S. He needs challah, and he makes challah on Yom Tov. No shaila whatsoever. Milisha ve'elach is definitely mutter. But ktsira, plucking a fruit, is way before lisha. So l'chayra ktsira on Yom Tov should be asa, and if that's the case, Boneh should be asa on Yom Tov, because Boneh is also before Lisha. And you look in Shulchan Aruch in the beginning of Hilchas Yom Tov, Tav Tzaddik Kei Beis, Ktsira, Tchina, Betzira, Schita, squeezing, making fresh orange juice on Pesach is okay on Chalamai, but not on Yom Tov. And Seder, person wants to have fresh fish. So you'll add a shecht on Yom Tov, and to kill an animal is no problem, but the issur is Seder. It's interesting. It's only asur midarbanan. If it's before Lisha, why shouldn't it be a deraisa? So if you look at the Torah, which of course the Shulchan Aruch is based on, the Torah says that really midaraisa, any oichel nefesh is mutter. But Chazal said any melacha that's done for yomim rabim, that you do not just for today, but you do it in a big scale, Chazal asked malacha that's done for Yom Rabbim. And Ktsira, is usually not plucking off a fig. Ktsira is harvesting and cutting. Tchina is done on a big scale. Betzira, Schita, and Seder. So it comes out that even though it's oichel nefesh, it's also midirabanan. Midaraisa is mutter. We'll soon see why I stress that. Now, what's takamutta even halacha lamaisa? Understandably, cooking and baking, because that's something you do for that day. I mean, before the hat freezes, you've baked and cooked for the same day. However, there are shittas, and the Rishonim, in the Siddur in the Rishonim, Beis Yosef quotes them, that it's not true. Lisha ve'elech is asa, before lisha, is asa midaraisa. Tzira and schita and those things is asa midaraisa. And the Mishnah Berurah explains this, even though it's oichel nefesh, not all malachis are mutter for oichel nefesh on Yom Tov. In other words, all agree Yom Tov is not an easy pass to do what you want. Yom Tov is mutter oichel nefesh. Which oichel nefesh? So according to some Rishonim, only milisha ve'elech. According to some Rishonim, even before lisha, if it's oichel nefesh, it's mutter midaraisa and asa midarabana. I'll give you two quick examples, then we'll go weiter. Someone asked me, he wanted to make freshly brewed coffee on Yom Tov. I'm not familiar with the metzias, but this is what he tells me. It's not a machine. He takes coffee grind, he puts it in a filter, pours hot water over the grind, and it drips, and he has freshly brewed coffee. So someone told me there's no problem, of course, of bishul. Bishul on Yom Tov is mutter, but the problem is boira, because this is a kli boira. So I told him it's not true, because on Shabbos, boira on Shabbos is mutter. But on Yom Tov, is awesome. But on Yom Tov, this type of boira is mutter. Boira is before lisha, but that's the boira that's done in the field. Typically, when you have, after the threshing and all the malachos, you have to separate the chaff from the food. That type of boira is done liyamim rabim in the fields. That's why it's awesome. But the boira that's done samach l'suda, or by the suda, for the suda, in the kitchen as opposed to the fields, is mutter. And that's why even those that don't use a peeler on Shabbos, on Yom Tov, since that type of boira is mutter, you could use a peeler. So if you want to get a bracha in your house, you tell your family you're allowed to use a peeler on Yom Tov, especially on Pesach. It's a very appreciated heta to use a peeler for all that peeling. Shabbos, we don't use a peeler. On Yom Tov, a peeler is mutter. If so, our question of pulling off a fig off the tree is definitely awesome. The question is it deraisa or derabanan? But chaviv and divrei seifrim, for all practical purposes, pulling off tzira, fruit on Yom Tov, is definitely awesome. Now the question is, so what about boira? Boneh. So indeed, if boneh is not being done for oichel nefesh, all agree that boneh on Yom Tov is a deraisa. The Rambam says in Chaz Yom Tov Regalach Halacha Beis, the Shulchan Aruch and Tov Kuf Beis Aleph is mamish mefurish in a different context. Boneh that's not for oichel nefesh is categorically awesome. Why? First of all, it's not oichel nefesh. That's enough of a reason. Also, it's before lisha. The question is, but how about a boneh that's done for oichel nefesh? For example, a sukkah. You need to eat in the sukkah. Maybe ice cubes. So the question is, where does boneh fit in? Can we be mekel for oichel nefesh? Is it asa deraisa, asa midabanan? You're wondering, how do you find the case of boneh in the Gemara regarding oichel nefesh? So that's beautiful. Our Torah is a Torah Shlem. You have to just find the right answers. The Gemara in Shabbos of Tzadik Hey says, "Megabein mishumay mechayiv mishum boneh." Making cheese on Shabbos is a form of boneh, because the milk, whatever the ingredients are, solidify and it becomes solid. Making cheese on Shabbos is a malacha deraisa of boneh. As I state the Mishnah Berurah Shin Yotes Sifka and Samach Gimel, quoting a Rambam, the fact that it becomes so solid, that is boneh. Now, Rabbi said we have a different question. What about making cheese on Yom Tov? And I warn you, this is much more negay than you think, because most of us are not going to make cheese on Yom Tov, but the implications are very negay. So the truth is, this shaila, you have to be a shtickle bal moifus, because the only havamina to make cheese on Yom Tov is if you're going to use it l'boy b'yoyim. You can't make Yom Tov cheese for Yom Tov Sheni or for Chol HaMoed, certainly not. And usually the cheese is a pretty long process. We're talking about someone that has a schneller cup and he makes cheese in one day. Boy beyond. So the question is Boneh, which is a real oichel nefesh, mutter on Yom Tov? So this is a Gemara Shaila. Shabbos kuf lamed daled, ma'u legabein, is it mutter to make cheese on Yom Tov? Amalei asa, he says, no, it's asa. Now listen to Akasha. Frag the Gemara, ma'ishneh milisha. You're allowed to make lisha on Yom Tov, so why is megabein any worse? To us it's a pella. Lisha ve'elech is mutter, that's why lisha is mutter. Boneh is way before. But evidently, if you're making it in the kitchen, maybe it's like bayra. You're doing it for oichel nefesh, not in a field situation. Maybe that's why it's mutter. But Rabbi said the teretz is beautiful. Hasam loy efsha. In other words, you can't make challah erev Yom Tov because you like to have fresh challah. It's loy efsha b'ayjayim. But Boneh, making cheese, adrabah, it's better you do it. The earlier the age is a virtue when it comes to cheese. Rabbi said this is one of the big yisoidis in Hilchos Yom Tov. Even if something is mutter for oichel nefesh, if it's efshel asayis mi b'ayjayim, you're supposed to do it mi b'ayjayim. This is a tremendous musa haskell, even if it's mutter, but don't waste precious Yom Tov time preparing food. You could do it erev Yom Tov, do it erev Yom Tov. But it happens to be Chazal were very sensitive to Einig Yom Tov, and Chazal said almost all foods are EF Shmi B'ayjayim. I mean, you can make it erev Yom Tov, but you like fresh food. You like a fresh roast, fresh challah. So food b'derech klal is considered EF Shmi B'ayjayim, and therefore you're allowed to make food, bake and cook on Yom Tov l'tzarech ha'isayim. I'll give you one example. Making jello should be done before Yom Tov, because jello does not lose its quality if it's made erev Yom Tov. An interesting example of Ef Shmi B'ayjayim that caused quite an uproar. The Drisha, the Akdama to Yeredeya, quotes his mother, the son of the Drisha, I should say, quotes his mother, the Rebbetzin of the Drisha, who said that you have to light Neiris Yom Tov on the erev Yom Tov, the first day of Yom Tov, mi b'ayjayim dafka. Don't wait till at night. You have to light it dafka, like today, around 6 o'clock. Just like we did at Erev Shabbos. Hadlokis Neiris is muta on Yom Tov. It's an oichel nefesh, and you're not making a fire, you're just transferring a fire. So the Drishas Rebbetzin reasoned that this is an example of efshe mi b'ayjayim. You can do it mi b'ayjayim. Okay, some argue, there's some seif about this, a lot of tumult about this. But the basic klal to be mate hilchos Yom Tov is it has to be ef shemi b'ayjayim. Now, granted, many people do light at night and they're cheshbainis, but all agree if it's ef shemi b'ayjayim, you have to do it mi b'ayjayim. A perfect example of a food that's efsha mi b'ayjayim is making cheese. Cheese does not lose its quality. But the longer it lasts, the longer it ages, the better it is. And Zakmar, that's why making cheese on Yom Tov is asa, it's efsha mi b'ayjayim. The truth is, we today have a second reason why you shouldn't make cheese on Yom Tov. Because no one makes just a slice of American cheese. You make cheese in a big volume. Oy bazoi, making cheese is yomim rabim. And so therefore, even if it's oichel nefesh, it's not better than ksira that's asa because it's yomim rabim. And if you said that, baruch shekivanta. Because doik v'tishkach, the mechaben tofkuf yud sif hey, says, ein oisen gvina b'yom tiv. Why? Zok the Taz Magen Avram. It's efshemi b'ayjayim. Comes again the Magen Avram. Nearly, the ikatam is, because the derech is to make it for Yomim Rabim. If you look in the Rosh that we quoted in the beginning, the Rosh says, what's the issur of Yomim Rabim? Because it's of the Dechayel. You could do it before Yom Tov. It's something that's done in big scale. You should do it before Yom Tov. Zok the Magen Avram, that's why you can't make cheese on Yom Tov, because it's done Yomim Rabim. And he has a beautiful raya. The Gemara says you can't make cheese on Yom Tov. Frag the Gemara, ma'ishne milisha. Frag the Magen Avram, why did the Gemara say ma'ishne from afi and bishul? Why lisha? Teretz, afi and bishul is done for that day. The Gemara is saying a bigger kasha. even lisha, that's typically done for Yom Rabim generally, is still mutter. So why can't you make cheese? The teretz is, the most teretz is that Kamaisa making challah Erev Yom Tov is not fresh. Cheese you could make, and that's why it's awesome. Oi bazoi, there's two reasons why we don't make cheese on Yom Tov. Number one, it's efshemi b'joim, and even if for some reason a person didn't have the ingredients Erev Yom Tov, it's efshemi b'joim, it's still awesome because it's derech to make Yomim Rabim. And if you said that, Baruch Shekivanta to the Prima Godim, so the Prima Godim on this Magen Avram, since there's a second reason of Yomim Rabim, so even if you didn't have the ingredients, if it was Eyav Shemi B'Yayim to make cheese, it's still also because of Yomim Rabim. Okay, the Sharatzian mentions Makilim, but La'alocha, Mr. Brura Paskins, you can't make cheese on Yom Tov across the board. So Rabbi said we have the following: Boneh on Yom Tov is Asami Daraisa. If it's Oichel Nefesh is a question, but at the end of the day, cheese is Asa, certainly to be made on Yom Tov for two good reasons. Now let's talk Tachlis. A person had a wonderful Sukkah, it collapsed. He has no Sukkah, and he has a whole bunch of family members without a Sukkah. So if you go to a neighbor, Megitzach Eitza, okay, but we're talking about there's no Eitza, he's a Yid without a Sukkah, which is a terrible dilemma. So you're wondering, what's the Shaila? Maybe he could either build it himself on Yom Tov or get a guy. What kind of hat is that? Maybe this is Oichel Nefesh. He has to eat, a Yid has to eat in the Sukkah. More so, this collapsed Sukkah was Eyav Shemi B'Yayim, or maybe he didn't be B'Yayim, but he has no Sukkah now. But the problem is, there's a second cheshbon. And that is, whatever's done the Yomim Rabim, there's no heta. And you don't build a Sukkah for one day. So here we have sort of a quandary. It's Oichel Nefesh, it's Yashni B'Yayim, but L'maisa Boneh Be'etzem is done the Yomim Rabim. Now listen to a Toisvis, Shemu Suchin Afshechem. Toisvis in Shabbos, Daf Tzadik Hey, Teima L'ri, and Toisvis assumes that you're allowed to make cheese midaraisa because Oichel Nefesh. No of us, they're Boneh acid because of Efshemi B'Yayim. But midaraisa, you're allowed to make cheese on Yom Tov. So Frek Toisa Mardi Kekasha. Oi Bazoi, forget about Sukkahs. Tois talking about Shvuas. You want to build a house because you don't have a house, person's homeless, and it's very sunny, you can't eat in the sun. Frek Toises, listen, Toises is even more aggressive than I am. Frek Toises, it should be mutter to build a house on Yom Tov of Shvuas, not a Sukkah house, because of Oichel Nefesh. You're not eating the house, but mitoich shahutra Boneh for Megaben, it's mutter Boneh, even if you're not eating the house. So if the house facilitates Oichel Nefesh, for Ektois, it should be mutter to build a house on Yom Tov. Forget about a Sukkah. Sukkah is a mitzvah, but without a mitzvah, building a house on Sukkah, on Yom Tov, for Oichel Nefesh should be mutter. Zok Toisvis, listen to this. You're right. Building a house, if it's necessary for Oichel Nefesh, is mutter. But, and this is music to our ears, it's of the Dechayel, like Tchina and Harkodah. Now, till today, you might have been mystified. What does he mean? But for us, it's Mamash Mosik Midvash. Tais is saying, since Boneh is always done L'Yomim Rabim, it's no better than Ksira, than plucking the fig off the tree. So it's Asa Midrabanan, because it's the derech to be done Yomim Rabim. And as I told you, the Rosh, in the beginning of the third parak in Be'eh, says, Yomim Rabim is Asa also of the Dechayel. So it's like a beautiful puzzle that everything fits in. Taka Toisvis hold Midarais, you're allowed to build a house on Yom Tov Oichel Nefesh. But it's Drabanan because of Yomim Rabim. Now, of course, we're talking about, it was Eyav Shemi B'Yayim, so the first reason doesn't apply, but we still have the second reason. So, building a home is like fishing or Ktsira, that's Asa Midrabanan. But Rabbi Isai, I told you earlier, Mr. Burr brings, the Torah Beis Yosef brings, there are shitas that hold that Ktsira and Tchina is Asa Midaraisa. According to those shitas, building a house on Yom Tov, even if it's oichel nefesh, is an issur d'oraisa. You're wondering, what's the difference? The rice, the Boneh, we keep everything. Oh, is there murdik and afkaminas? Now, Rabbi said, let's talk about our shaila. Not shvuas, sukkahs. Not building a house, building a very necessary sukkah. L'chayra, we could suggest that it's mutter for a yid, if there's no guy available, to build a sukkah. First of all, it's a tzarech mitzvah. And number two, it's oichel nefesh. So what? Where does a mitzvah justify an issur? Maybe if you go with Tosfos, that building on Yom Tov is only asa midrabanan because it's Yamim Rabim, maybe the combination of oichel nefesh, the tzarech mitzvah, would justify Boneh on Yom Tov. Where do we get such a thing? You look in Tafkuf Yudalad, Sif Aleph in the Shulchan Aruch. The Mechaber says you're not allowed to put out a fire on Yom Tov. Kibbeh on Yom Tov is asa. But Zakter Amah, let's say a person, his house is burning down, and he has a Suda someplace else. But if the house burns down, he won't have where to eat, can't eat in the street. It's mutter to make kibbeh because of oichel nefesh. And Mr. Burr speaks out, you're not saving the food, you have food. You're saving the house to be able to eat in it. So we see kibbeh on Yom Tov is mutter oichel nefesh. Kleret the Pri Megadim in Taf Reish Lam and Sif Kot and Gimel and Mishpatzai Zahav, Oy Bazoi, maybe if you have a sukkah that's not kosher and you want to repair it on Yom Tov with an issur d'Rabbanan, maybe it's mutter even al yidei Yisrael because of oichel nefesh. In the second place, in Pri Megadim Taf Reish Lam at Ches Aleph, in the beginning in Eish Lavram, he has a shayla, murdik shayla. There's too much schach, so much so the sukkah is puzzle. So he declares, can a yid remove some of the schach and repair the sukkah? This is the Rabbana, maybe it's mutter b'makom mitzvah. And in the third place, in Taf Reish Chav Ches, the end of Taf Reish Chav Ches, Mishpat Zahav, again he has this question, an issur d'Rabbanan, is it mutter for a yid to do, ba'atzmai, to facilitate the kiyam mitzvah of sukkah? So the Pri Megadim has three places, suffix, you can't just brush it aside. However, for us, hopefully we know this is hard to accept. Because halacha l'maisa, we know if a city has one shayfa, and for some reason someone put it up on a tree, and now Yom Tov came, ein oilam be'ilan, so we paskin in Shulchan Aruch, Tafkuf, Peyalev, Sif Chaf Aleph, you can't climb a tree. An issur d'Rabbanan cannot be done even to facilitate the heilige mitzvah of Tkiyah Shayfa on Rosh Hashanah. So therefore, Tainat Rabbi Kiva Eigen, the Agois on the Bikurim Yankov and Tais Bikurim Taf Reish Chavav Yud Aleph, the Pri Megadim suffix doesn't seem to be too much of a suffix because in halacha l'maisa we don't allow a yid doing it, even issur d'Rabbanan b'makom mitzvah. Now in that scenario, we'll have a guy do it. That's fine. But for a yid to do an issur d'Rabbanan, even b'makom mitzvah, is not mutter miyikadidin. But Rabbi say, listen, Shimu Suchinavsh, listen to something to think about, food for thought. I saw this in the Bikurim Yankov in three places, Taf Reish Lamed, Lametes, and Taf Reish Chav Ches, and Shleima Klug in the Chacham Shleima on the page in Taf Reish Lamed Zayin has the exact same approach. Even if we hold you're allowed to do an issur d'Rabbanan for a mitzvah, this case is no heter. What's your mitzvah? Rabbi, tell me your story. You have no sukkah. Oh, if someone has no sukkah, what's the halacha? He's allowed to eat out of the sukkah. So this person, this sukkah-less person, we'll call him, has no chi of sukkah. So why are you doing an issur d'Rabbanan? The case of Tosfos, believe it or not, is better. Because a homeless person has no home. If you have no home, maybe you could entertain the thought, you're allowed to build it for oichel nefesh. But a sukkah-less person is patur from sukkah. So you have no mitzvah. Tainat Rabbi Shlomo Kluger and the Bikurim Yankov, the Aruch HaNer on Shulchan Aruch, if there's no sukkah, fafalin. Now literally, fafalin a sukkah, fafalin a mitzvah. So it's not even a mitzvah. Now the Pri Megadim obviously held that maybe start fakert. Since it's a makom mitzvah and you have a het of mitzvah, so as if the sukkah is accessible. But just think about that, how the Poskim were focused on Hilchos Yom Tov. If you have no Sukkah, Fafalin. Okay. So Lamaisa, we are not Mekel Aydei Yisrael. The Bekiv Eiger says that the Farish, even the Pri Megadim only has a suffix. So if a person has no Sukkah, even if you'll say that building a Sukkah on Yom Tov is only Asam Midrabanan, then of course you can't be Mekel. I must add, like the Rishonim that hold Boneh for Oichel Nefesh on Yom Tov is Asam Midaraisa, nothing to talk about whatsoever. Now, to apply this Lamaisa, someone has no table or no bench, for example, nothing to use. He wants to fix it for Tzorech Oichel Nefesh on Yom Tov. That would not be Mut, and certainly not on Shabbos. I should mention, we're talking about fixing a Sukkah. The Chayodim wrote this 250 years ago. It's in the Gear today very much. In Chayodim Mekuf Mem Vav Zayin, he says, we talk about building sukkahs on Yom Tov that's asa, lav dafka building with a hard hat and a wooden frame. If you have in those days it wasn't canvas, if you have a cloth wall, so that's also Boneh. Today we have canvas sukkahs. Even though we don't picture canvas being Boneh, but it is a Boneh. If the canvas wall or sukkah is becoming a sukkah, that's Boneh. And Boneh on Yom Tov is also, even if it's a cloth material. The Shulchan Aruch and Tov Reish Lamed Zayin Aleph writes, if someone didn't build a sukkah, being b'shoigi, being memezid, he can make it on Chol HaMoed. Zot the Mishnah Berurah, but on Yom Tov you're not allowed to make it. Now that's a chiddush, because there would be a tzad to say that on Yom Tov Oichel Nefesh is mutter, but the Mishnah Berurah obviously was not mekel, so we don't build even a Yisrael, even issur the Rabbanan, even the Tzorech Oichel Nefesh. An interesting question, the question of the easy filters that many people have on their sinks. They're worried about the copepods and water. I'm not getting into the copepods or anything about that issue, but the question is, can you take off the easy filter, screw it off, clean it, and replace it on Yom Tov? So again, a lot of shittas hold that since you are screwing it on and it's there to stay, it could stay, so it's moisiv ala binyan, because the sink is a mechubal akarka, and it's a form of Boneh on Yom Tov or Shabbos, and it's awesome. So if indeed you go with that shita that since it's screwed on, it's there to stay, it's Boneh, so on Yom Tov would also be awesome. Now some people say I take it on and off all the time, so it's not Boneh. So if you do it on Shabbos, of course you can do it on Yom Tov. But those that will not take off and put back the easy filter on Shabbos because they're concerned of an issur Boneh, the same applies to Yom Tov as well. Question: a sukkah collapsed. Can I have a guy repair my sukkah? So here, this is a lot more promising, because this is the mitzvah of Oichel Nefesh, the mitzvah of Sukkah, the mitzvah of Oichel Nefesh, and the fact that I'm asking a guy to do it. So maybe we will say Boneh on Yom Tov is Asam Midrabanan, as we said according to Taisis. So we don't do it, the Yid doesn't do it, but they ask a guy to do it on Yom Tov would be a shvus to shvus b'makom mitzvah. The problem is that according to some Rishonim, we just learned Boneh on Yom Tov is asa even for Oichel Nefesh midaraisa. It's only one shvus. Also, what do you do if your mazel, the sukkah collapsed on Yom Tov shechal b'Shabbos or Chol HaMoed? Boneh on Shabbos, all agree is asa midaraisa. The only ray of hope is a chiddush of the Bala Ita. The Ramah in Reish Ayin Vav C base quotes the Bala Ita, one of the Rishonim, that b'makay mitzvah, if you will be denied doing a mitzvah, you're allowed to have a guy do a malacha daraisa, like neiros and shul, so people could learn or daven. According to the Bala Ita, you could have a guy build the sukkah from scratch, even though it's a daraisa, even if it's Shabbos, b'makay mitzvah of sukkah. Now, that's a problem. Number one, we saw earlier the Chachma Shloima and the B'gur Yankov says there's no makom mitzvah, so eat without a sukkah. But more than that, the Ramah says not to be saimech on this Bala Ita. The Mishnah Berurah and Sivkot and Chav Dalet quotes the Shlah that was very, very upset about those that are mekel. There's a phenomenal tshuva that Behuda and Archaim Lamed Gimel, he says people call a guy to light neiros for Ne'ilah on Yom Kippur, because after all, if you didn't have lights and the candles burned out and you were sitting in darkness. Now, the Buddha says, who asked you to do that? Don't say Ne'ilah, but don't have a guy do a malacha deraisa on Shabbos, even a malka mitzvah. So, the issue here is that having a guy do malacha deraisa, even malka mitzvah, is far from pashut. It's a das yachid or the bala ita, but the poiskim, Shlomo, Mr. Brunner, the Yehuda, Ramah, don't accept it. Comes again the Pri Megadim, listen to this. Pri Megadim was a prolific writer. One of the Swami wrote were the Chuvas Megiddos. They're very brief Chuvas. It's a tiny volume, but today they reprinted it in 3 volumes, Pirushim on the Megiddos. Show what the Pri Megadim's avort Pri Megadim is. But in the Chuvas Megiddos, Simon Kuftes, he has a Ma'aseh Shehaya Bebeisi. Sukkah is Tov Kuf Lamed Zayin, close 250 years ago. It was the first night of Sukkah fell on Shabbos, and he writes there, I hope no one's a carpenter, but as a derech of Payalim Atzelim, they built for me a Sukkah, and it promptly collapsed the first night of Sukkah. So here I am sitting, Shabbos Shechal Sukkah, without a Sukkah. So he writes there, I had a terrible tsar, I'm looking forward to 2 days of Yom Tov without a Sukkah. So my Bnei Beisi called the guy without asking me, and he promptly built a sukkah, and I didn't tell them anything, and then I declared, was it right? And if it was wrong, maybe I can't even sit in the sukkah because it's Ma'aseh Shabbos, who's built on Shabbos. So he says, but there's a Bala Ita. Bala Ita says you're allowed to have a guy do malacha deraisa, b'makei mitzvah, so therefore, maybe that you could be samech on. B'makom tzorich gadol, I was very much bitzar. Listen to his lashon. Haroitz lahat lechatchila kachai gavna ein chet biyadoi. It's a very mild lashon. Lechatchila, you're not going to go to Gehenna for it. I mean, maybe Gan Eden not. I mean, I don't know what he means, but lechatchila, there's no chet. So this is problematic, because in the best scenario, it's a Bala Ita, Keneged the Ramah, Shla, Noid Yehuda, and many others. And that's why in the Pri Megadim, which he wrote after the Megiddos, he apparently revisited this question, and a few times he refers back to his Megiddos. Now, if you know, the Pri Megadim is always very brief. But in Taf Reish Chavav, Sif Katan Ches, and Eish Lavram, he has this shaila of Amir La'akum to fix a sukkah, L'hoyres heta chalilali v'tzarchin b'chol zeh. Now, that's l'maisa the Pri Megadim chalilali. In the second place, where I mentioned earlier, Tafresh Lamed Ches Aleph with schach that's too thick, he says maybe Aidei Akum is muta. See what I wrote in Megiddos. And in the Shintes Vav Aleph and in Pri Megadim the Psiche Hilchos Yom Tov Gimel, he again cross-references what he writes in Megiddos. Now, Lamaisa, a lot has been written about the Pri Megadim, what is his opinion, but one thing I'll tell you, the Mishnah Berurah in Taf Reish Chavav Sif Katan Chav writes, are you allowed to fix a sukkah on Yom Tov when he has nothing else? The Yom Tov this is. Pri Megadim writes, Chalilali lahayras heta v'tzarachian. Mishnah Berurah seems to be machmir, even on Yom Tov to have a guy fix the sukkah. Yet in Taf Reish Lamed Zayin Aleph, the Mishnah Berurah quotes a Ber Yitzchak Chanan, the Chuvas Yud Gimel, Nafal Sukkah, you're allowed to call a guy, fix the schach on Yom Tov. So here, he paskins lahakol, and early he paskins lahachmir. So I saw Rav Nissen Karel, I mean a lot of the later Achronim asked the stira, but the basic chiluk is, if a person was peisheya, or he was negligent and didn't build an Erev Yom Tov, that's chalila li lahayras heta. Either he didn't fix the sukkah right, or too much schach. The problem was he should have done an Erev Yom Tov. But if he built a beautiful sukkah and it collapsed on Yom Tov, for that the Mishnah Berurah is being saimech on the Ber Yitzchak. But for us, what's music to our ears, if you look in the Ber Yitzchak inside in Siman Yud Gimel, why is he meko to have a guy build a sukkah on Yom Tov? He points to a Taisvis. Which Taisvis? Taisvis in Shabbos Sadikei. Was steht in Shabbos Sadikei? that building on Yom Tov Eichel Nefesh is only Asami D'Rabbanan. Oy Bazoy, it's a Hetabar. The only Boneh on Yom Tov is D'Rabbanan for Eichel Nefesh, and this is Aydi Yaakov, it's a Shvus to Shvus. Now he does it, if you hold that Boneh is the Raisa, you could fall back to the Baal HaItta. But that's not the basis of his Heta. So it seems that to build a Sukkah on Yom Tov Al Yedei Akum, we're pretty comfortable to be makel. It's only a Shvus to Shvus, like Taisim Makkah Mitzvah. But the problem is Shabbos. Shabbos Boneh is the Raisa, even Vaychel Nefesh, what do you do? So let me tell you a beautiful thought that will affect all of our shaylas. Let's say the sukkah, the walls are standing. Generally, today, especially today, the schach, the bamboo mats, or the schach is too heavy, and the frame collapses. So you have a sukkah without schach. Maybe there's another tzad to be makel, and that's why the Yaakov is certainly mutter. Building is also on Shabbos deraisa. Oil is only oil kva. Oil aroi is only asami d'Rabbanan. How would you classify making a sukkah on Shabbos or Yom Tov? Is it an oil aroi or is it an oil kva? You wonder what's the difference? Oil aroi is asami d'Rabbanan. So maybe once it's just putting back the schach, which is arai, you could have a guy do it because it's shvus to shvus b'makom mitzvah, even on Shabbos. And that, you look in Shulchan Aruch, Shin Tez Vav Aleph, that's the basic cloud. Kva is asami d'Raisa, oil aroi is asami d'Rabbanan. So Chayr will say, wait a minute, how long does the sukkah last? 8 days. Is that a kva? And they say a story about this fellow built a sukkah, and there was a very anti-Semitic judge who told me you have to take it down, you have no license. So he goes, just give me a few days. He goes, okay, take it down within 10 days. He goes, thank you, have a nice day. He beat the system. 10 days? 10 days doesn't seem too long. But that's the question. So Re'ez Apel, just to classify sukkah, maybe the Lashon Tzei V'diris Aroi is indicative of its status. That's the Rabbanan. Does anybody put up a mezuzah on the sukkah? Is that a reason to say that's only Arai? L'choira, from all of this, there would be a tzad to say that a sukkah is at most an oil Arai, and therefore the akim is mutter. And this is another one of the sveikos of the Pri Megadim. In Tov Reish Chavav, Sifka and Ches, he declares if a sukkah is an oil arai, and therefore it's mutar de akum. But the Pri Megadim earlier in the beginning of Shin Tez Vav seems to say that a sukkah is considered kva. He doesn't say why, but if you look in the Shailu Meshiv, Madura Dalid, Chayla Gimel, Siman Chafei, he says a novel svar. The chshivas of the mitzvah of sukkah gives it a permanence. The fact that it's a mitzvah, a prominent mitzvah, makes it permanent. If I could give a mashal, I don't know if the Pri Megadim, I don't know if the Shalmeshiv would agree to it, I think it's a good mashal. If a person drinks yayin poiter kol minei mashka, but if he drinks just a drop of wine, it doesn't pat kol minei mashka. The Derech HaChaim, the Nesivos holds, if he drinks a drop of wine, it doesn't pat the mashkim, because it's too little. But a drop of wine of Kiddush might pat the kol minei mashka. The Mishnah Berurah has a suffix to rely on this, but that's the Derech HaChaim's yisoid. Because a mitzvah is choshev. Apparently the Sholem Eshiv held the sukkah is choshev. Its permanence is its chashivus. If you hold that a sukkah is a diras kva, then we have no heta to have a guy build it on Shabbos. But the Bialacha in the beginning of Tov Reish Lamed Zayin quotes a Maimon Mordechai that holds a sukkah is an aroi. There's a very important tshuva. If you're learning our sukkah, you have to see this tshuva inside. The Teres Chacham was written by the Baruch Tam, the Shver of the Divrei Chaim. In the Tshuvas Chaim Siman Vav, he mamish has our shaila where someone's prepared a sukkah and it collapsed on sukkahs. And the question is, can you have a guy repair the schach? Now I should mention, some of you might be wondering, guy put up the schach? Is that a kosher sukkah if a guy puts on the schach? And the answer is a resounding yes. Because the Gemara says sukkah is ganvach, and one of them is if a guy built the sukkah is kosher. The only thing you have to realize is the guy has to put it up l'shem tseil. Rabbi Yashav and others, or Vosen says this also, if the guy put it up because he wanted to do his job, or because he thought it's some type of religious observance, that's not l'shem teil. The guy has to be told to put up the sukkah for a protection. You don't have to tell him the kavanas ari in sukkah, but l'shem teil. So here we're talking about that a guy is being told, I need shade from this mat, whatever it is, put it up. So Zakti Baruch Tam in the Chuvis, I saw the Pri Megadim has a tzad to say that a sukkah is a diras kva. How could that be? 7-8 days is a diras kva. Also, he says, there's no attachment, there's no connection. You put it on the schach and then you could just sneeze, so to speak, and it comes right off. Is that considered a diras kva, just putting it on nocha ba'alma? And he says, yesh pischa in peh, to say that because that schach is only aroi, you could have a guy put up schach on Yom Tov. And I would add, he's talking about Yom Tov, but the same is true on Shabbos. Because even though Shabbos no heta of oichel nefesh, but if the whole sukkah is only a diras aroi, it would be mutter to have a guy replace the schach and make it from postel to kosher. The Bekura Yankiv and Tais Bikurim Tafresh Chavav Yud Aleph also wonders on the Pri Megadim, how do you call a sukkah a kva? Does anybody put up a mezuzah on a sukkah? And therefore it has to be that it's a diras aroi. The Beis Yitzchak, the Levovirov, and Ebenezer Chelik Beis Kuf Chafei Aleph seems to say a sukkah is a diras kva. He says, just like Kesher Shel Kayam is 7 days, Sukkah Shel 7 days also Kayam. And also the mitzvah makes it kva, and therefore it should be a binyan deraisa. And then he concludes, so out of nowhere, that it's only a aroi, and you could have a guy repair the schach on Shabbos or Yom Tov. Rav Vosner in Chelik Aleph Kuf Yotes also wonders, where do you get 8 days, 10 days? It's totally on how long you're keeping it. So Rabbi, even though we have a Pri Megadim and some that hold Shalmeshav holds it's a diras kva, but these Gedolei HaPoskim seem to insist that it's no more than a diras aroi, and the choira, it would be mutter even to have a guy do it on Shabbos and certainly on Yom Tov. Again, he should be told to do it in a l'shem tzeil, and therefore be mutter. Now, l'maisa, what I'm wondering is, if you want to be a little frummer, how about this eitzah? You tell the guy, please put back my schach, but this is not lasting more than 2 days. Because I will take it off on Matzai Yom Tov, and I'll put it back. In other words, he's putting it on, that could last. But you're going to take it off within a day or two, depending on when you're doing it. Is that a heta to make it l'kul alma a diras aroi? None of the earlier poskim said this eight, so why not? Could be if b'chefza it's a sukkah, diras kva, and the schach is there to stay, the fact that you take it off just to sort of circumvent or to prevent the issur of minchal, but who are you fooling? It's a diras kva, like the Shalom Meisha Pri Megadim. So again, no one says this, it's a little bit tzarachian to me, why not? But could be you look at the quality of the workmanship, not your kavanah to take it off. So let's be very clear, lamaisa, if a sukkah, the schach fell off on Yom Tov, to have a guy put it back is much more of a tzad to be makel. You have a number of tzad to be makel. Like Toisis, only the Rabbanon, it's Aroi, and it's just a mitzvah. If the schach fell off and it's off on Shabbos, a little more of a problem. You don't have the heta of Yom Tov, but we have the heta of Aroi, and we have the heta of Bala'ita in the worst scenario. And if there's no other choice, even on Shabbos, a guy could be asked to be replaced to schach. I should mention, if the walls caved in, and then you're coming on to Boneh, mamish, Boneh is no heta of Aroi. Consider the following question that's extremely common. People have these bamboo lightweight mats, so it moved off a place. So the back 10% of the sukkah has no schach, but the sukkah is 100% kosher b'li pikbuk. The only thing is that area is no schach. Sometimes it flaps, it folds on itself. So my question is, the sukkah is 100% kosher. Can a yid just move the schach back into place, either flip it over or move it flew that way, move it the other way. My question is, when the sukkah is 100% kosher, can a yid repair the mat? I mean, you tell the guy, come in and could you please move the mat an inch or two? He goes, Rabbi, why don't you do it yourself? This is not an oven. You know, he's a shtickle talmid chacham. He knows about ovens and fridges, but why can you move the bamboo mat? So one problem with moving bamboo mat is schach is muktzah. It's hutzla mitzvasai. It's a very severe muktzah. It's not even mutal tzarach mekaymai. So for that, you'll use an eitzel. You'll use your head, literally, or you'll move it galachaya with your elbow. We're talking about that you're not violating hilchas muktzah or hilchas boneh. It's just making this segment of the sukkah kosher. So you're wondering, how could you have a yid do it? So I'll tell you, I think we do it all the time. If you have a shlak that's partially covering the sukkah, you're allowed to extend it entirely, because moisif al oil on Yom Tov or Shabbos is mutter. That's the Ramah and Shin Tezvav. So vivait the shlak, the sukkah is kosher. It's just the schach and 90% or more or less, but okay. But you have a oil that's right now functional. Moving the schach is just moisif oil aroi. And if you're allowed to move the shlak, why can't you move the schach? And indeed, the Pri Megadim in Shin Tezvav Aleph seems to have this stance in this question. However, the Shalom Eish that I mentioned earlier has this question, and he says that here it's not just moisiv al oil, it's a sukkah, and the chshivas of sukkah makes it asa even to be moisiv al oil. Now, it's hard to know exactly what he means, but maybe the point is, it's more chashiv than you think. It's not a regular shlak. But what's, I guess, more that we can understand, Rav Shlomo Zalman is quoted in the Shmir Shabbos, Chav Dalet, Sivka and Kuf Chavav in the Ha'aris, has this shayla, and he has another beautiful svara. He says, you're not just being moisiv al oil. You're making this 10% from pasel to kosher. So you're making more sukkah. That's not moisiv oil, that's making more sukkah. Making more sukkah on Yom Tov or Shabbos is awesome. Extending a shlak is not making anything of significance. Making a sukkah, albeit 10%, is awesome. So therefore, although Lamaisa the Pri Megadim seems to be makel, the Aruch HaShabbos Tes Mem Zayin is also makel, a shtikula, but Mr. Brewer, in beginning of Tov Reish Lamed Zayin, quotes this Shaylu Meishiv. So avada, we should be chayshiv for that and not to extend the schach al yidei Yisrael. You could have a guy do it lechatchila, no shayla about it. Listen to another question to think about, an early Simchas Yom Tov question. Someone asked me this question regarding a canvas wall, but the truth is negeya also to movable walls. Imagine a sukkah that's perfectly kosher, but there's a movable wall, and you can move it back and forth, whatever the reason is to get into the sukkah, whatever the case is, a movable wall that you move back and forth. When the wall is moved away, the sukkah is pasul. When you push it back into place, the sukkah is kosher. Now again, that could be by a wall or by a cloth wall that just slides on a pole. But imagine a situation that you slid off the wall and it's pasul. You slide it right back, it's kosher. Are you allowed to do that on Yom Tov? This might be Boneh, not just oil. But then again, the fact that it's connected, we know you're allowed to open and close a shlak that's connected, because like opening and closing a door, that's the end, they're among the end of Tov Reish Chavav. So why don't we apply a movable wall to a movable shlak? However, Rav Shlomo Zalman, Alich Shloim Zayin Tezayin, writes, Yesh l'stapek if this is mutter. Obviously, the hesber is, like we said earlier, you're not just making protection on the sukkah, you're making a sukkah, and that should be worse. Let me leave you with a few non-sukkah Hilchas Yom Tov questions. The old question, making ice cubes on Yom Tov. So for those that are makel to make ice cubes on Shabbos, so Yom Tov is certainly mutter. I'm talking about those that are machmir not to make ice cubes on Shabbos, but Yom Tov, it's 2 days, 3 days, and usually it's hot, the climate is hot. Are you allowed to make ice cubes on Yom Tov l'chatchila? So it comes to mind, especially we learned today, is you're not allowed to make cheese, you're solidifying a liquid. Is that applicable to making ice cubes from water? The answer is absolutely not. Because when you make cheese, it solidifies and that's the way it remains. When you make ice cubes, it's a temporary status. You take it out of the freezer, in a few moments it melts. So no one holds making ice cubes is boneh, even those that are machma on Shabbos not to make ice cubes. The issur is moiled. You're creating a new entity. From liquid, you're making a solid. And indeed, moiled on Shabbos and issur the Rabbanan, and that's why many poskim are machma on Shabbos. But when it comes to Yom Tov, moiled for oichel nefesh is mutter. Even though we know moiled reyach bibegadim is asa, that's not oichel nefesh, but moiled for oichel nefesh is mutter. And Rav Vosna and Yud Ayin Test plus many others say taka, making ice cubes, even if you're machma on Shabbos, on Yom Tov is mutter. I must add, it's only the boy b'yoyim. You have to make ice cubes the first day for the first. You can't make in advance. That's the regular issur of Yom Tov and Yom Tov meichel lechaveiroi. Making jello is a little more solid than ice cubes, a little more analogous to cheese, but then again, it's not cheese. Cheese, you're taking a milk, making it into a new substance. This is basically just solidifying the exact same ingredients. And basically, this is a moiled for oichel nefesh, that's mutter. The only reservation is that jello is one of the few foods that's efsha miba'oid yom, like we said earlier. And therefore, if a person could not make it miba'oid yom, you're allowed to make it on Yom Tov. Many poskim hold making whipped cream from the can, from the aerosol can, on Shabbos is a form of moiled. B'yadayim, you're creating from a liquid into a cream. Even those that are machmar on Shabbos would allow making it on Yom Tov, because this is a moiled l'tzoyrech oichel nefesh. Some hold even on Shabbos it's mutter. It's not a real creation. It doesn't last long. I'm talking even if you're machmir not to make it on Shabbos, on Yom Tov would be mutter. Someone asked the Betzina Rav and Chelik Ches Kulam Ches, are you allowed to make knedlach on Yom Tov? Don't forget knedlach seems more similar to megabein. So he writes, and this is typical of him, he says, what do you mean? The Chassam Sofer's house in Klal Yisrael makes knedlach on Achron Shal Pesach, and about there's no shayla. But why is there no shayla? Teretz is pashut. If that's moiled, if that's boneh, so how could you make a cake? Make him a solid, liquid to a solid. The teretz is you're making a new entity. It's not just you're taking the milk and you're freezing it or solidifying it. Cheese is a new entity. And the poskim will say that making knedlach on Yom Tov is vadei mutter. Baking on Yom Tov is mutter. I saw the Shmir Shabbos has a shayla about braiding challah on Yom Tov. And don't forget, braiding hair on Shabbos, in Shin Gimel Chavav, the Shulchan Aruch says braiding hair is a form of boneh. So the answer is that's true of braiding hair, but boneh, it does not apply to oichel of challah because that's not really boneh. It's making a braid in challah that's still to be eaten. So braiding challah on Yom Tov avada would be mutter. Opening cans is a share for itself, but just halacha l'maisa. Someone asked me this question. He has a certain type of soda that only comes in small 16, 12 ounce, whatever, of cans. And he can't open it before Yom Tov. Is it mutter on Yom Tov to open a can of soda? So the truth is that the Shulchan Aruch seems to be directly addressing this question. Listen to Tov Kuf Tes Vav. Einoik v'nekev chadash b'chaviyas b'Yom Tov. You can't pierce a new hole into a barrel on Yom Tov. Presumably, it's a spout to pour out the wine. Zok the Mishnah Berurah. But if you're doing it for oichel nefesh, and it was not efsha miba'oid yom, then you're allowed to puncture a hole in that barrel. Zok Rav Moshe in Igros Moshe Chelik Aleph Kuf Chavez Anaf Yud. That is the precedent for our sugya. If a can was unable to open it, so he says, like the Mishnah Berurah says, halacha ein moirin kain. You shouldn't tell this barabim, but this is a Talmidei Chacham, they probably know this anyhow. That a machshiri oichel nefesh, that the efshemi b'yom, you're allowed to do it on Yom Tov. Zakir Moshe, and let's say you have a scenario that's efshemi b'yom, because this brand of soda does not come in a twist off; it's only puncturing the holes. Halacha u'moirin kain. So you have an outdated machaber that's seemingly outdated is very relevant in our times. Reb Shlomo Zalman and the Shmir Shabbos in Tes Ha'ara Dalet has one reservation. Since the het is based on oichel nefesh, if you could, instead of making an ice hole, you could destroy the can and get the soda in the same way, it's better to do it ba'ofen kilkul than to make a keli on Yom Tov. And rather, other places can say even more so, it's mutter to puncture a hole. But if puncturing a hole, like in a can of soda, is considered makeh b'patish boina, that tak is not so pashut as mutter. And some attack are not so excited about Rav Moshe's heta of EFC B'yom L'chatchila to do it on Yom Tov. So if it's certainly better when you want to open a can of any food that you need on Yom Tov, to do it ba'ofen kilkul. They say open the bottom and the top, but do it in a way that it's not leaving a permanent lasting keli, and that certainly would be mutter even l'chatchila. Opening bags, packages, which is never making a keli, is just soisa, that would be more mutter. Avada, the Magen Avram, in fact, speaks about opening a letter that you received on Yom Tov. And Kuf Tafkuf Yotes Siv Katan Dal, he's a shtickle and makel, even though the Goyin's machmeh. But why I think this is Negeya, people have dasim and arabas in an airtight bag, and they want to keep it until Mamish Yom Tov Rishon in the morning. So there would be a tzad, that would be not oichel nefesh mamish, but that would be something that's needed l'tzarech Yom Tov. So to tear it bag in a destructive way would be mutter l'tzarech Yom Tov. I once had the shayla in the yeshiva, someone came over to me, first day Yom Tov, the glasses lens fell out. And he says he's very hard to see. He doesn't look forward to going 3 days, a 3-day Yom Tov, to go 3 days legally blind. He can't see. He wants to push back the lens, but he knows on Shabbos it's a problem. So I told him you came to the right person. I happen to know that sugya. The Mechaba in Tofkuv Yud Tes Beis, based on a Gemara and Tosfos, the Mechaba says that something that's also on Shabbos, Shema Yitka, which you might come to screw it and tighten it, Yom Tov Chazal did not ask the Shema Yitka, which means, I'll give you a contemporary example. To pop a lens back in its place is not an issur. The issur is Shema Yiska, like the Mechaba says in Hilchos Boneh. You might screw it tightly, and that's Boneh. Screwing something tightly is Boneh. So popping the lens back in itself is not the issur. It's since this lens also has a screw on the side of it that will tighten it, so Chazal said don't pop it in, Shema Yiska. But on Yom Tov, there's no Chashash Shema Yiska. So you could pop it in, and even though you have a screw there, just ignore the screw, there's no Chashash Shema Yiska. The same is true on the temple fell off, and you want to replace it, and as long as you don't screw it in tightly, just putting it back and it's functional is on Shabbos as Shema Yiska, on Yom Tov it would be mutter. That's why, incidentally, even those that are makbid not to play with Lego, any interlocking toys on Shabbos, but Yom Tov, there would be a tzad to be makel because there's no chashash Shema Yiska. So basically assembling something on Yom Tov when there's no screw being used would be mutter. Someone asked me, I guess a food for thought, can I assemble a sukkah made of Coca-Cola crates? So the truth is those things last and last and last. And there's no Shema Yiska, but then again you don't need the Shema Yiska. So that I'm not so happy about because that's really an issue, because there it's a sukkah that's lasting. And let me leave you with two ha'oris l'maisa. I'm just going to mention the ha'oris kein l'chacham v'yech kamoid. The Mechaba says in Tafkuf Yudal Tziv Ches, you can't cut a wick into half to make it 2 wicks, because that's the issur of tikkun mana, which is also even on Yom Tov. Because don't forget, Yom Tov only some halachos are mutter, but creating a new entity on Yom Tov is also. Neiros on Yom Tov is a form of oichel nefesh. I need it for my suda. That's why Rabbi Akiva goes, you're allowed to clean the burnt out neiros to prepare for halachos neiros, because halachos neiros is oichel nefesh. Rabbi Akiva and Tov Kuf Aleph. So why can't I cut the neiros? The teretz is you can't do a malacha gemura l'tzarich oichel nefesh. Comes again the Sefer Hilchos Mayadam Yud Gimel Yud Ches, and he says we see putting a shoelace into a shoe, if it was never there, is an issur of makeh b'patish. So he says, Oy bazoi, and I'm sorry, I wanted to bring it, but I forgot to bring it, to make a floating wick, which is made up of the wick part, the waxed wick part, I'm sorry I didn't bring it, and the round cylinder that you put the floating wick into, and that keeps the wick floating. And many people light with oil on Shabbos and Yom Tov, So to make a floating wick on Yom Tov, he says, is a form of makeh b'patish. You're making a floating wick. Just like putting in a shoe, lace is not much malacha, but you're completing it. This is the issur. However, Rav Vosner, Chelik Tes, Kuf Chav Ches, and many others say the analogy is incorrect. Because Lamaisa, the wick as it is fully functional. You want the accessory, you want the service that it stays up and doesn't fall in. But you're not completing the wick. The case of the shoe, you're completing the shoe. Shlomo Zalman and Shmir HaShabbos, Lamed Gimel Orem Mem Tes, is also makel. And he says it's like making a baby bottle. You're opening and closing it, which the analogy to me is a little strained, because that's made to open and close. But the truth is, the floating wicks, like most paiskim, is not a shaila whatsoever. Where it could be a question is very often the round cylinder is supposed to have a hole punctured through, and it's not punctured through. The cork part is still there. When you push in the wick, you're puncturing, you're making the cylinder, you're making the floating part. That's taka makeh b'patish. That's lasting touches. I want to also mention Rav Vosner in that tshuva writes, Ani bla'atzmi nahagti, to prepare it all before Shabbos, before Yom Tov, I should say. But Lamais it's mutter. Why was he machmir? Maybe I'll hilchas Yom Tov. But I just want to mention there's another reason we should try to prepare those 40 weeks before Yom Tov, not else the issur. There's an incredible Rabbi Kiva Eiga on the Mishnayos in Masechta Shabbos. The Mishnah says that 3 things women die b'shas leida. The 3 averis, chana, shtevas chala, nida, and adlokas neiris. For Rabbi Kiva Eiga, the lashon is inconsistent. It says chala, nida. It should say ner. Why is it adlokas neiris? So Rabbi Kiva Eiga, that this is a remiss to what the Heilige Zohar Kaddish says, that the woman's job is only to light the neiros. The man's job is to prepare the neiros. Now, many men are very religious about this. They prepare the neiros Erev Shabbos and even Erev Yom Tov. But doik v'tishkach, Yom Tov Sheni, most men miss the boat. Because you can't prepare it before you go to Mincha. And after Ma'ariv, the women already lit candles. And you always miss the boat. You miss this minig Yisrael. So that's why I always prepare the floating wicks before Yom Tov, and I tell my wife where I put it. That's also important. Otherwise she can't find it. But therefore I was preparing the neiros mi ba'oijayim. And last but not least, listen to this shaila. Let's say someone violated halacha and built a sukkah on Shabbos or Yom Tov, either Yisrael or Akim, in a case where it was vadei asa. So Shlomo Zalman and Mincha Shloim Chelik Aleph Siman Hey Anav Beis and the Hagah had the shaila: is he allowed to sit in the sukkah? You can't have hana from Malecha Shabbos, but is this hana? The ground is there, the table was there, the chair was there. What hana am I having? He says maybe it's like someone that built put up an umbrella to prevent them from the rain or from the sun. That's only mavriya chari, not having hana. But he says, but it's a big chiddush to me, and I found that Panam Eirais is machmir, not to sit in the sukkah. What's the difference between a person that built a umbrella to keep him protected from the sun? It's beautiful. That's taka ameisa maineya. Here he has the very positive, tremendous mitzvah of sukkah. That's part of his oichel nefesh, and therefore we should follow the halacha and taka do it before Yom Tov. Good Yom Tov to you all. Yeah, right away. Mom's right away.
Shame Egan, she'll tell like you big Yashikar, as Smith for today's share. We'll say seek him in a few minutes, or right away. Take her from the yard. Chag Sameach. Ran you want to catch him, what's the Baruch Zaki, so we hear him tell me to Shanem, Alanai Chofes, and Mansidkoi. Yad go tear the yard.
Al Israel, al Boneh, al Talmidim, al Talmidim, man go asim bereis ba soldei, ba sa. Hey la hoy, la khoim, shlomer ab khide be fiz de berach, de khaygi in zone be. Kana wat besmayo. Hier war ab ro me. Hey, shlomer ab besmay, khayim de dim, al Israel, ro me.
Why is it not down? It's not. We're going to go back. Stand up. Not only, you know, the mix. Give me a second. Still ready?
Let's build in the Sikkim, repair the share, and shh, a few minutes.
Just let's review what we learned today. Not all malachis on Yom Tov are mutter, even v'aychol nefesh. I think Rabbi Chaim once said Yom Tov is like Shabbos, but there are many heterim. That's the right approach. We have to learn each sugya differently. Basically, milisha ve'elech, the Yerushalmi seems to say that's the guidelines. Some say daraisa, anything before lisha is b'derech klal asa. Some say only midrabanan. But definitely not all malachis are mutar eichel nefesh. Machabes says ktsira and techina and trapping tzeda are all, and meraket are all asa. Some deraisa, and some say it's the rabbanan, but all agree not all malachis on Yom Tov are mutar. There's also another derech klal, only if it's efshemi b'yayim are you allowed to do malacha. Also, a malacha that's done for many days, l'yamim rabim, is something that is uvda d'chayil, could be even midaraisa, but it's certainly at least asa midarbanan. So the basic klal is it has to be a malacha that's mutam, it has to be efshemi b'yayim, it has to be something that's done for that day. Megabein on Shabbos is a malacha deraisa of Boneh. On Yom Tov is asa for two reasons, either efshemi b'yayim or because it's done l'yamim rabim. To build a house for Eichel Nefesh, according to Tais, is only Asa Midrabanan, and according to many Rishayim, is Asa Midaraisa. A Yid repairs a Sukkah on Yom Tov is Asa, even if it's only an issur d'Rabbanan, because a mitzvah does not justify an issur d'Rabbanan, like we see regarding Tkiyah Shayfa and other mitzvahs. To fix a table or a bench or an easy filter, even if it's Eichel Nefesh, but Boneh on Yom Tov for Eichel Nefesh by a Yid is not mutter. And that we say about sukkahs, even a canvas sukkah says the chayadam, or a cloth sukkah, is the same halacha of Boneh applying to it. To ask a guy to repair a sukkah, if the person has no other choice, on Yom Tov is easier to be makel, but the truth is even on Shabbos, we had what to be saimech on. If a person has mamish no eitzah, to call a guy and repair the schach, that's a heta, besides everything else of the aroi of the schach. The issue of building a sukkah from scratch, the akum on Shabbos, is a big tzarachi in gadol. But on Yom Tov, to build a sukkah, or on Shabbos to repair the schach, is much more to be saimach on. The question of a sukkah being aroi or kva, we saw many poskim say it's a kva, but there are enough poskim that hold it's an aroi. You can be saimach on the schach being a oil aroi. For Yisrael to move the schach back into place, even if he's not violating muktzah and he's not fixing a possible sukkah, but adding more sukkah is worse than being moisif on an oil that's mutter regarding the shlak. As we said, the Mishnah Berurah quotes The Shalom Meisher, Shlomo Zalman has his hezbollah that it's making more sukkah, and a yid should not extend or move the schach, even if it's kosher as it is. That a guy should be enlisted to take care of. A movable wall, l'chayr, is worse than a shlak, and therefore it would be a problem of Boneh, putting it back and forth. You're allowed to make ice cubes, whipped cream on Yom Tov. Jello could be made if it's EF Shemi Boijoim. Knedlach, braiding chal is okay. Opening wrappers and other flimsy wrappers on Yom Tov is mutter. Opening cans on Yom Tov is an issue. If it couldn't be done by Boijoim and it's oichel nefesh, there's what to be saimechan, better do it in a destructive way. There is no gzeir shema yiska on Yom Tov. That's why putting lenses or even fixing a table, if the leg fell out, you could push it back in place without screwing it in. That would also be a heta of Yom Tov, no shema yiska. Floating wicks, the velt is makel, and there's certainly what to be saimechan. And as far as a sukkah that was built be'issa, I mentioned the Shlomo Zalman quotes upon a me'iris. I forgot to mention that Rabbi Feinstein and Chelik Dalet Samach Tes and Rav Vosna also hold that it's asa to have enough from the sukkah if it was done be'issa. Someone asked, mitzvah lav lahanis litnu. So the answer probably is that here the mitzvah is to have enough from the sukkah. Mitzvah baba aveira, but that's certainly not the case, because here it's not the sukkah that's the aveira. It's the issa of mitzvah aveira is regarding a lulav that hal guf aveira. So basically, there wouldn't be a problem of mitzad mitzvah. There wouldn't be a hetav lav hanis nitnu, but the problem is having enough from someone else done be issa. Okay. How we see you. Yeah.
I usually use I don't use the Shabbos. I mean, Erev Yom Tov. Right, yeah.